Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror film from the United States, English language, released in the year 2019, directed by David Marmor, and this film is called Apartment 1BR. It's also known as 1BR, which is the title in the United States. So if you can't find it under one title, please look for it under the other. So the story to Apartment 1BR is basically one bedroom. You've got this young woman who's trying to break free from her family because she's had a traumatic history that has really weighed her down. So in order to start a new life, she goes all the way to Hollywood. Now, we learn that she's living out of a hotel, she's working as a temp at a law firm, but she needs a more permanent place of residence if she's really serious about what she is trying to achieve. So she applies for an apartment at a luxurious complex. She doesn't think she'll get it because a lot of people are applying, but to her surprise, her application is successful. So she meets the manager, she meets the fellow neighbours, and they appear friendly enough, but then straight from the first night, things don't go well. There are very strange noises coming out of the plumbing system, which prevents her from sleeping, which after a while starts to have a very detriment effect to her personal life and her work life. So she's trying to find out what's going on. Her neighbours say they can't hear a thing, so she starts to doubt her sanity. But then as the bizarre situations start to increase and it goes from the plumbing to events that start happening within the complex, she starts to wonder, is she really going insane, or is in fact there is a very real danger that is posing a direct threat to her? So whether or not it is psychological or in fact reality is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now, my thoughts on Apartment 1BR, aka 1BR. I didn't know what to expect from this movie. No one ever talks about it. I just saw it on the shelf here in Australia one day and I thought, why not give it a shot? I was very intrigued by the synopsis, and when I saw the trailer I thought this looks like a version of Roman Polanski's The Tenant. Now, obviously I wasn't expecting it to be as good as that movie, but I really like these types of movies that are set in sort of an apartment complex, and I thought to myself, is this going to be a movie about trust? Is this a movie about ambiguity and interpretation? And so I thought, all right, well, why not give this a shot? You know, every movie deserves a completely fresh slate, but when you get films that have a lot of hype about it, whether it's positive or negative, you can't help but feel influence. But then every now and then movies like this come along where no one talks about it, so the influence is not there, and you're going to give this movie every opportunity. So I was hoping that this was going to be a gem, but I had the hesitation and the skepticism that, you know, maybe this is a film that hasn't been talked about for a very good reason. But at the end of the day, I will say that although this is not a gem, it is still a very serviceable film, and the director achieves what every movie needs to, and that is keeping the audience's attention from the first minute to the last. And the reason why this director does this is because the movie is chopping and changing. It never stays stagnant, and that is something I really like. But there's also something about that sort of aspect that I didn't like, that I'll go into a little bit later. But the fact that it's chopping and changing keeps a level of unpredictability there, and unpredictability in turn helps intensify suspense. And so the suspense in this movie I thought was fantastic. There's a strong creepiness, that the eeriness is seeping through the screen, and it's done in the way that Roman Polanski did it. So I thought as though the first half of this film at least was Roman Polanski, but then in the second half it starts to transform into a different style of horror. So it's combining psychological with visual horror in a way where I thought as though it was a very rewarding overall piece. And so I thought it was handled very well, it was juggled very well, it keeps its tone to a level where I thought, all right, I was really satisfied with what I got. I thought the complex, the setting of the complex was very good. The fears that this woman had in her private life, and also the fact that she's moving to a new life, I thought that really plays into the psychological effect. Is that, okay, is this wearing on her mind, and is the danger real or is it not real? And so those questions are constantly being asked, and that's something that, again, I really liked. I thought the neighbours were very creepy, but at the same time very friendly. So there's a level of ambiguity to these characters in the first half of this movie, and I really like that aspect as well. And so it does create the old-fashioned Roman Polanski and Alfred Hitchcock, and that's something I really like, but it doesn't rip off those movies. It would have been easy just to do a carbon copy of The Tenant and say this is your own film, but this movie does have a strong level of confidence underneath. You can feel that confidence because it is taking you in directions that not a lot of other directors do. And so in a world where it's all about recycled material, this movie feels like it's an inspiration of films previous, but it's actually taking its own soul. It has its own heart and it has its own style of confidence, and that confidence is emulated through the visuals. There's a very dreary, dreamlike sort of atmosphere. There is that level of mystery and intrigue that helps intensify that level of anxiety and suspense. And as I said, the fact that it is an unpredictable movie keeps you umming and ahhing, and basically you don't have that cheat sheet. You can't look into the future and know what's in store for this woman. And so that was all very good. I thought the acting was fantastic, especially the main character. And there's also a commentary on a theme that I'm not going to talk about, but it is a theme that is very relevant in today's society. And it's a very scary one. And I have to be very careful not to give anything away, but when you see the movie, you'll know what I mean. It does show you the power of humanity, and the fact that what happens in this movie is happening in everyday life is something that you can relate to, and it's not something that you can completely disconnect yourself from and say that this is make-believe. And so I thought that really plays well, and there is some nasty violence in the movie. So combining violence with psychological horror, I just thought as though it was a movie that deserves a lot more recognition because it is very competently made. I thought the soundtrack's fantastic, and as I said, everything about the soundtrack, the visuals, the interactions between characters in this movie, it keeps the mystery. And that very consistent tone of mystery just makes it a film that I would highly recommend if you are a fan of this style of horror/thriller. But what I didn't like about the movie, not so much what I didn't like, but I thought as though it was an opportunity to be an absolutely fantastic film, is that it loses its sense of ambiguity fairly early on. And this is where I thought, okay, this is going to be a disaster. But thankfully, as I said, it keeps twisting and turning. And so it has a very deliberate idea, but I thought it would have been a lot better to have a lot more interpretation about it, a lot more ambiguity, because ultimately being an ambiguous film creates even more sense that you don't have control, you're lost, you're disorientated. It's not holding your hand. While this movie never really holds your hand, I thought it would have been a lot better if it tried to play on the aspects that it has early on in the movie. And so that could have been a movie that would have been absolutely phenomenal. It would have really been a love letter to the works of Roman Polanski. But as I said, on one side you can say it's a negative, but on the other side you can say it's a positive because it's not recycling. And as I said in time and time again in reviews past, that recycling is a sense of control because you know how this is going to go. Recycling brings predictability. But this movie, it does have, as I said, it's not recycled, but it is paying inspiration, but it has a level of confidence that prevents it from being predictable. Therefore, you always have that maintained suspense levels that I thought was definitely the biggest high point of Apartment 1BR. So if you are a fan of this style of film, I definitely think you should go out there and see it. It's a film that is simplistic enough in the way it tells its story through the characterization, but it's still just a really fun exercise in old-fashioned horror, and you've also got the more modernized version of horror with the graphic violence that the movie has that's really going to appeal to a lot of people. It's not a long film, so it's very consistent in its fluency as far as the pacing is concerned. The tone is very consistent, and as I said, it never outstays its welcome. So capturing an audience's attention from start to finish is always a really good thing, and that's exactly why I definitely think you should go out there and see this movie. So overall, for Apartment 1BR, aka 1BR, I'm going to give this one 3.5 stars. It is a fairly simplistic film, but it's very serviceable in what it does and possesses a lot of confidence. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.